Super excited that everyone has chosen to spend a little bit of time with us today. I know there's a lot of professional development here at UAGC that you can be a part of, but spending time here is really, really fun and engaging. And I'm super excited about our presenter today. Jenny's been here before and presented for us, and she was amazing, so I asked her back. Jenny Miller is a literacy expert with Ann Arbor Public Schools in Ann Arbor, Michigan. She works alongside teachers and students to focus on literacy achievement in grades pre-K and K through 5. Her work includes collaborating with other experts, coaching teachers, and reading intervention. Prior to her current role, she was a classroom teacher. She also provided professional development to new and veteran teachers. She has an early childhood endorsement and English language arts endorsement from Eastern Michigan University. Jenny, we are super excited to have you today. Thank you so much for being here, and the floor is yours.
I am really glad to be here with all of you today. And I talked to Letitia a little bit via email, and we decided to kind of change things up a little bit from last year. So as you can see on the screen, last year we talked a lot about writing. And this year, due to just a few things that we've noticed coming out of a year where kids were mostly virtual last year, and then just some things that we're noticing this year. And one thing that really made me think about some of the topics that I'm going to share and some of the activities that I'll share today was when we were doing our kindergarten roundup about a month ago, and parents were asking what they could do to help support their students before coming to school. And usually I just say, read to them, talk to them, play with them. Nursery rhymes. I usually have a repertoire of things that I share. But coming out of our year where things were mostly virtual last year, and in Ann Arbor, we were virtual until about March of last year. So coming out of that year and then coming back this year, because even when we returned in March, the kids were hybrids. We didn't have kids in person all day, every day until fall. So as kids have come back, kids in young fives, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, really all the way up, we've noticed a few things. And so today I'm going to talk about some of those activities and those skill areas that if a parent asks me this year what they can do to support their child at home before kindergarten or young fives, these are some of the things that I might share with them. At the end of the presentation, I'm going to share with you a link to a Padlet. So if you're watching this recorded later, the last slide will have the link, and you can pause and jot that down, and you'll be able to access a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today. And also you can see here, if you did want to have a little bit more about writing, you can see last year's presentation, which is also on your YouTube channel. In fact, that's the link that I shared there. So let's go ahead and get started. So I wanted to share with you that in addition to being a teacher for about 17 years and now a coach for about 4 years, I'm also a mom. So even though my kids now are in high school and one is in her first year of college now, it seems strange to say, but when I think back and I reflect back on just really the foundational pieces of things that we worked on when they were really young. And so some of these activities are some of those things that we did when they were young, and also some things that I wish that we had done when they were younger. So just to get us started today, a couple of things to keep in mind while we're learning together, that as adults in the room, you are the catalyst for your own learning. So as you see fit, if you're live with us today, you can ask questions, share your learning in the chat, and be involved, but also take care of your personal needs. And so I completely understand cameras being off. I am going to be in professional development myself later today, and we'll be taking advantage of that too. Also, just keeping in mind that this is a time where you can use the new things that we're learning to integrate with the things that you already know, but just taking an opportunity to kind of stretch yourself and think about what's the best that could happen with some of these new ideas. So here is my contact information. If you want to email or if you want to connect on Twitter, feel free to get in contact with me. And as I said, we're going to be talking about some things that we've kind of learned or uncovered in the last 2 years. We're going to start with developing fine motor skills, We're going to move to some phonological awareness fun, songs and rhymes, beginning writing, and we're going to think about emergent storybook reading. So when we're thinking about fine motor development, I was thinking especially about my own children who are now a little bit older, but I was thinking about them when they were young. And some of my kids really gravitated toward really using their hands. In fact, my son still loves pottery. His birthday is on Sunday and he's asked for a pottery wheel, which is totally different than what he does in the rest of his life. But he has always loved really working with his hands and, kind of working those muscles that are kind of prerequisite for some of the later work that we do in writing. But his twin sister, Lainey, she has always been kind of a more gross motor girl. She loves dancing. He dances too, but she really loves dancing and really working her whole body. She loves working out and really, really taking charge of some of those things. So when they got to school and started to do more writing, Drew was really adept with writing very early. And Lainey really didn't care for it. And from first glance, it might have appeared that she didn't really like writing, but she was a prolific storyteller. She could tell stories, and we have videos of some of her stories that are just amazing. But when it came to writing it down, she was reluctant. And I think a big part of that was that fine motor development. So these are some activities that I thought might be really helpful for someone like Lainey. So one thing that I was thinking about is how much kids love to be helpers. And we often give them scissors when we're inside and we help them to cut paper or cut on the line. And we think about, cutting shapes. But when we can give them scissors and really encourage them to be helpers. So maybe you're gardening and you're outside and you're asking them maybe to trim some weeds, or they're practicing cutting the blades of grass. And when they're using those skills in their hands, they're really developing those muscles that are going to help them with later cutting, but also other things like writing. And this can be really fun and engaging because it's something new and different and outdoors. So giving them scissors to help with gardening is one idea. Another thing that I've learned from some occupational therapists is that the same muscles that we use to peel a clementine are the muscles that we use when grasping pencils or scissors. And so helping your child to be independent, starting at a very young age, you can kind of teach them how to peel that clementine. And clementines are nice because the peel tends to release a lot easier than larger oranges. So we're going to watch a preschool student, very young preschool student, who is independently peeling a clementine. You can watch their hands and see those muscles working. You can see those tiny fingers really pulling and pinching. So this child is 19 months old and is independently able to peel that orange. And in addition to being independent and really trying to get that sweet fruit, it's also helping to develop those muscles. Another idea is drawing with chalk. So I'm going to show you a couple of different things that kids can do with chalk that can be really fun and also continue to develop that fine motor. So one thing that you might see students do a lot in early childhood, they love to lay on their stomachs. And when they're laying down on their stomachs, it positions their arms. They have to kind of hold their arms up on their elbows. And then it really works when they're writing and drawing, really works their wrist muscles. And you can see this child has that pincer grasp too. Sometimes we see like the whole hand grasp. This particular child has moved towards the pincer grasp, and getting smaller pieces of chalk is going to encourage that pincer grasp instead of the fist. Another thing that you can do is we see a lot of places have chalkboard walls or an easel. And when children have to hold their hands up to write on the surface, like that's an easel or a wall in front of them, it automatically positions their hand in a way that is moving like they will when they're doing writing later. And this one is really fun. If your children aren't really, sometimes kids are reluctant to do some of these activities because they don't know how to write independently yet, or drawing is difficult. So one fun idea would be to take their toys outside and in the sunshine, position their toys so that there's a shadow and they can start to trace those shadows of those toys. So you can see here in this picture, the child is tracing a dinosaur. And that can be really exciting for them to draw something that maybe they didn't think that they could draw before, but tracing that shadow is helping them to be successful. And then another activity would be then to use a spray bottle. So those muscles again that are squeezing that spray bottle can also continue to develop those muscles that are going to help with later fatigue when they are starting to do more conventional writing. So one idea would be to have them help spray like some indoor plants, to water those indoor plants, or back to the chalk. It's also kind of sometimes fun to spray those chalk drawings and to see what happens with all the colors when they're mixing together. I heard one parent say that they like to draw monsters and then spray the monsters away. So let's just think for just a moment. If you're on watching the video at a later recording, you might pause the video and think about some things that we've just talked about. If you are joining us live, if you want to share anything with your voice, you can turn your microphone on, or if you want to share anything in the chat. But I'm just wondering if you have noticed any shifts in skill development, especially that fine motor skill. And have you tried, how have you supported the development of those muscle groups? So we'll pause for just a minute. If anyone wants to share anything.
Jenny, it can be as easy as taking clothespins and having them move them around. I used to use putty. I used to use Play-Doh. I used to use stencils, so many things. But I wonder, is the things that students are using now, like they're playing games with the little remote, is that helping or is that hindering? I don't know if it's making them stronger or not.
So we're wondering that too. All of our students were supplied with, our younger students were supplied with laptops at the beginning of the with iPads at the beginning of the pandemic. And then we moved to tablets that had the touch screen. And we're noticing and we're watching students as they're using those, and they're really using an extended finger. Occasionally they're pinching their fingers to make something bigger or smaller. But we're wondering if some of those skills are being impacted by the use of technology. And while we don't want to abandon technology, technology really helped us to connect with our students especially during remote teaching. And we want to have a balance or a blend to help support some of these skills that we know are going to be important. If you have anything else, please drop it in the chat and we'll continue. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is phonological awareness. And this has been something that I have really kind of doubled down on my own personal professional development over the last couple of years, really studying phonological awareness and phonics, and within phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, and studying how kids are learning all of those skills that are going to help them later with reading and writing. So things like rhyming, things like isolating sounds in words, identifying the symbols or the letters and connecting those to the sounds that letters can make. So we're going to talk a little bit about some ideas that you might try in your classrooms or share with families that can support phonological awareness in a fun way. That's not a flashcard or a skill and drill kind of activity. So one activity might be to play something called letter sound bingo. So this chart that I have on the screen right now is one of the charts that we use in the schools that I work in, but you might have something different, or you might even just Google an ABC chart that has letters and pictures that coincide with the sounds for those letters. And I'm going to show you just a little bit with my document camera. Let's see, can you see that? I don't know, maybe it's just going to show up in my little square. We'll see if I can show it to you. So I have my, my ABC chart here, and we can do a couple of different things with this chart. So one of the things that we can do is we can work on letter identification. So I have a little one right now that I'm working with. She's in kindergarten. And the other day she was, we were playing this game and she was looking for W. And I noticed that she had to go through the chart, A, B, C, and she was saying the letters, the letter names until she got to W. And so that right away was a clue to me that her letter identification is not strong enough for her to recognize it from even the ABC chart that we've been using for quite a while. I will say she is a student that I haven't worked with for very long, so we're just getting to know one another. So things like this are things that I'm noticing and I'm wondering about. So one thing that you might do with ABC Bingo is you might have a stack of letters. Like I have some letters that I just cut out. You might even make 2 copies of this chart, and then you could cut one up. And so one could be the cards that you're calling, and then your student could have this chart. So as you're drawing a letter, you might draw the letter and you might ask the student or your child to find the letter C. And so they'll look at the chart and they'll cover up the letter C, kind of like our regular bingo game. And to make this extra fun, sometimes we like to cover things up with sweet treats like M&Ms, or for a healthier idea, you might try like Cheerios or blueberries, but they can put some kind of marker in the spot to mark this letter. You could even give them the matching letter to cover up the letter if it fits. That would be helpful with letter ID, but to be working on letter sounds, instead of saying the letter name, you might say, can you find the letter that says K? And if the child says K, you might say, you're right. K does say K. Can you think of another letter that makes the K sound? And so then they'll find maybe the letter C. And if they're not able to remember the letter sounds, you might have them like look at the pictures. So is there a picture that starts with the K sound? And so then they'll cover that up as well. So letter sound bingo can be really fun. I like right now with the little one that I was talking about earlier, I like to use the letter chart because we're also trying to familiarize her to this chart so that we can use this chart later when she's blending and segmenting words. But to make it a little bit more difficult, you could just put it on a word table, and you could randomly put the letters in place, and you could use either uppercase or lowercase, or you could use a mix of uppercase and lowercase. And this is also really nice if you have more than one student playing, because if they use the ABC chart, then everybody is going to have the same letters covered up in the same places. But if you use this mixed array, then they'll have different places that they're covering. So letter sound bingo can be another really fun way of building phonemic awareness. So switching back here, let's take a look. So this is another really fun game that we played, and we played this a lot virtually, but I think this could be really fun in an early elementary classroom or at home. So one of the other things that we did is we would draw a letter. So I'll just draw another letter. Let's see if I can draw. So I drew, if you can see it, I drew the H. So I might say to a student, can you find something in the room or in your home that says the sound? And we might practice saying the sound. Depending on how much support they need, you might say a few words that begin with like hat or horse, and you might have them repeat those words so they can feel what it feels like to make that sound in their mouth. And then they can also hear that sound so they can go and find other objects. And when you're supporting them and finding those other objects, I have just a bag of toys that I've collected. These are toys that my kids had at their house. So they're anything from like Legos to American Girl doll mini toys. So like right here, I have a hair dryer. I think this was from an American Girl doll toy or something. So I might say, hair dryer, horse. Does that match? And they might say, yes, yes, I hear that. I hear the sound. They don't have to necessarily say, I hear the H sound, because we really want them to hear the in the word. And H is one of those tricky letters. H doesn't really say the sound in its name. So it can be very tricky. So we really want to focus on that phonemic piece of what they're hearing instead of the letter name. You can make it more difficult as they get more skilled and start to work more with the sound symbol connection. So scavenger hunt. So then off they go and find things, and then they come back and they share the things that they found. I've done this in my classroom too, where I have kind of a pile of objects, and they, you know, usually in my groups, I have 4 or 5 students. So it's not a traffic jam or a collision to have those kids all in the same pile looking for toys. But they really love to have toys added, and it really adds some joy to their learning. Moving forward, another thing that you can do is you might consider having kids label things in the spaces. And we've talked a lot about like reading the room. You might have heard that a lot of early elementary teachers will label things in their classrooms, and then kids can have like their pointers and walk around and read the things in the classroom. But oftentimes those labels are made by the adults, and then kids can go, you know, they recognize the objects so they can read even when they're not conventionally reading yet. But one way to start to turn over ownership to that is to have kids labeling things in the classroom with beginning sounds. So you might have, I have both an uppercase and a lowercase, depending on the familiarity of the pieces with your kids, with your students. So you might have kids draw a B, and they might walk around the room or walk around the space and find something like a book. And they might stick this B on the book, because book sound starts with the sound B. So you might have them start to label with initial letter sounds, but then they might label even more later as they start to develop even more sounds, and as they start to be able to blend and segment words. Lastly, and I played this today with my kindergarten group and they loved it. So you might also, my little one who is still having difficulty identifying her letters and sounds, this was a really great game for her, because we had a bag, and this is just one of my take-home bags where they can take home books, and it's filled with magnetic letters. So she was reaching inside the bag and she was feeling the letters without looking at it, really tracing it. We talked about tracing it with her thumb, really thinking about that, looking at the ABC chart to see what letter might look like the letter that she can feel. And then she was taking it, she was guessing what the letter was, and then taking it out and checking it and seeing if she was correct. So really helping her to kind of have a multisensory way of thinking about letters. So we're going to move on to another activity that has been really, really popular with the kiddos. So you might have seen like lots of these different toys in your kids in your classroom, or maybe your kids have them at home. So I'm going to switch over really quickly and show you another thing that we can do with some of these toys. So I have these blocks, these big blocks they're called. And when we're working on some CVC words, so words that have 2 consonants with a vowel in the middle, we've been using these blocks instead of Elkonin boxes. So you might be familiar with Elkonin boxes where you might have a page that has the boxes on it, but they've been really engaged using these different blocks. So we can use words with, we can use like CVC words with this. We can start to look at words that have blends or digraphs in them by pulling out a block that a base that has 4 blocks that attach to it. So today we were looking at the word pet. So I took a dry erase marker and I wrote P, and I wrote the E, and then I wrote T. Okay, and then we put these blocks on our base and we said the sounds. We put those together and then we drew the sounds below with a dot. And then we connected those dots and slid the sounds together. Pet. And then we said it faster, pet. And we decoded that word pet. One of the other things that I really love about these blocks is that they have 4 sides. So we could also change the middle sound to an I. It, hit. We could take this first block off or turn it around and add a s and change the word again. So just another fun way of incorporating a toy or something that kids enjoy. They also think it's really funny when I pull out the marker and start marking on the toys. So then I always show them that I'm using a special dry erase marker and it will wipe right off. So that's one thing. You might have also seen these are so popular. All the kids at school have these. So we have these poppets. Usually when I pull these out, the kids get really excited. So I usually set a timer for a minute and let them pop as much as they can or as much as they want for that minute. And then when the timer goes off, they know that we're coming back for learning. So I might, let me just pull out one of my other tools that I have. So I have these picture cards. So here's one, and it shows me that it shows me the picture. I usually even cover this up for them. So we stretch out the word bed. So we take our fingers, bed, bed. Then we tap with our fingers. So I might say ed. So now I have it on my fingers, ed. So I have all the sounds. And then we pop it, ed. And we might double check it again, ed. And then I might say, what's the middle sound in bed? Ed. And they can come back and find the middle sound that they've popped. They ask to do these poppets every day. They love to pull out the poppets. So I didn't even order fancy shapes. I just ordered circles and squares. They have like unicorns and other shapes, but they love when we pull these out. We can use these for compound words. We can use this for syllabication. We can use this for segmenting sounds in words too. So just another engaging way of adding to our learning. So another thing that we can do is take out like different sounds. So we were working on middle vowel sounds, the short vowel sounds in words. So we had, I'm just going to pull out a couple to give you an idea, but we had all the vowel sounds out with their corresponding picture for their short vowel sound. And we drew cards. And this one, like for example, is pig. So we stretched the word pig. We tapped it, egg. We popped it, egg. What's the middle sound in pig? Eh. So then we had all of the vowel sounds, all the vowel cards out, and pig got a cube for I. So we started to, as we picked up different cards and different sounds, we started to build towers for each of the letters. And it was really interesting because I had just an assortment of Unifix cubes out, and they started to make patterns too. They started to pick up the colors and make different kinds of patterns too, like, oh, we need a blue, we need a green. So we were even doing some math while we were doing this. But the really nice thing about this is a small group can be playing this, and there isn't a student winner, but the letter sound wins, whichever letter sound has the tallest tower at the end. And they really loved adding this bit of play to their work. So pulling in some of these toys and really thinking about things a little unconventionally. Let me see if I can go back here now. Okay, so really thinking about things just in a different way, just a little bit more unconventionally, makes it really playful, brings some joy to it, and is something that a lot of our kids have in their possession or we have in our classroom already. So thinking about incorporating toys and manipulatives, what's a way that you might incorporate toys and manipulatives to increase engagement with your students? Or how could a teacher support caregivers in doing some of these activities at home that are really playful, don't feel like homework or school? So if you have ideas, feel free to put any in the chat. If you're watching online, you can pause and reflect for a moment. We're going to move on because we are getting, we're taking a lot of time, so I don't want to miss any of these parts. So next up, we're going to be talking about songs and rhymes. And one of the things that I was thinking about is that last year when we were virtual, we did a lot of singing together. And we had a song, it was by the Lori Berkner Band. And it was a song that we sang each day when they logged onto Zoom. It was playing and we would sing together. And then when we came back to in-person school, it was something that was familiar. But the song, I'll sing a little bit, even though I'm reluctant to sing to all of you, but it was, when I woke up today, I shouted out, hooray. So throughout the song, there are some rhyming words. So we're really thinking about rhyme, we're thinking about rhythm, and all of those pieces can really help lay some of those foundational skills for our students. So some of our favorites last year, I think this was a favorite even maybe when I was a kid, but Raffi is still a favorite in kindergarten and preschool and even into first grade. The Lori Berkner Band I mentioned, and then maybe one that's new to you is Emily Arrow. And Emily is a younger songwriter and singer. I think she lives in the Nashville area now, but she writes songs and performs songs and often has motions to those songs. But I would say 90% of the songs that she writes are related to a book or to a story. So you might find a book that you love to read, and then find the song and sing that song. One song that we love is it accompanies the book I Am Yoga, and so we have read that song, and then that song is often a song that we sing, and we do the motions, the yoga motions, while we're singing it to kind of find our center again and to find our way back to an energy level that's conducive for learning. I see somebody saying Dr. Jean too. Dr. Jean is also wonderful. I think there are so many favorites. But singing songs, and these songs especially, are great songs because Raffi especially likes to play with words and songs and sounds. And so it can really help our children with the more complicated phonological awareness skill of manipulation. So I'm thinking of the song I Like to Eat, Apples and Bananas. And when he changes the vowel sounds, it's really supporting kids hearing and manipulating sounds. And then we can accompany that with ideas in their reading and writing. So I'm going to show just a quick video clip of a teacher she has her Willoughby. Here's my little Willoughby. And she has her Willoughby, and she's going to do a little bit of singing with her class. And you'll see how the kids are manipulating the sounds in this song.
Here comes Willoughby, and Willoughby is ready to rhyme. Willoughby, wallaby, wee, an elephant sat on me. Willoughby, wallaby, wee, an elephant sat on you. Willoughby, wallaby, waiting, an elephant sat on Hayden. Willoughby, wallaby, wheeling, an elephant sat on Leland. Willoughby, wallaby, whoa, an elephant sat on Noah. Willoughby, wallaby, why-ya, an elephant sat on Maya. So when we sang the song Willoughby, wallaby, woo, and we got to Mila, and we sang Willoughby, wallaby, wheela, and then we said the elephant sat on Mila, they could hear the difference between wheela and Mila. That is useful so that when we're sounding out words, they can hear the first sound in a word and it connects.
So I want to share that video is from a resource that we have available to us here in Michigan, but it's also available to anyone really. So we have a website called literacyessentials.org, and some researchers, including Dr. Nell Duke, Dr. Susan Lallier, Dr. Tanya Wright, I'm going to forget, Dr. Tallier, I think is her last name. Some experts in their field came together with a task force for Michigan early literacy and determined based on the research and based on really a lot of research, and it's all referenced in these tools, but essential practices in literacy for our students. So there are essential practices for pre-K, I'm sorry, it would be birth to age 3, and then pre-K, and then K through 3, and 4, 5. So you can take a look by visiting literacyessentials.org. You can take a look at some of those resources. And there's not only just the printed essentials, but also there are modules with videos like the one I showed you. Oh, let me see if I can get to the next one. Okay, so what are 2 ideas so far? I was just looking at the chat too. So what are some ideas so far that you think could support our learners at home and in school? And what are some ideas that we could add to the things that I've shared already to support learners and caregivers? So if you have some ideas, you can again add those to the chat. If anybody wants to unmute, feel free. I just was taking a minute too to kind of look at the chat, and I saw someone mention a label maker. My son Drew, that I mentioned already, when he was younger, was obsessed with a label maker, had his own label maker, and we had labels all over our house. I think it came from his dad, who like Dr. Simasek. Our husbands are both pilots, and I think that the checklist and all of the things that keep them safe when they're flying are connected to their love of label makers. So I also see, yes, modeling. I think one of the things that that I'm hearing about is that we really need to do more modeling, not just for as a coach, I need to model these things, not just tell about these things, but really model these things to teachers and to parents so that they can hear and see. Even just something simple as like not adding the sound, the schwa sound to the end of my letters, but modeling how I clip that sound. So instead of saying ba, I say b. So that is going to help later when kids are blending sounds. And manipulatives, I'm a big fan of play and joy. I've done a lot to study the work of Dr. Goldie Muhammad and her work around joy. And when I can infuse joy in the teaching that I'm doing, it brings me joy as much as it does to the students that we're working with. Thank you for those ideas. Okay, so now we're going to get into some beginning reading and writing, and I think we're going to have time to wrap this up on time. So I'm going to share some of these ideas. So I want to share that when we model our own drawing and writing, and we think aloud and we name the shapes that we are using, that can be really helpful to students as they're putting those shapes together, children as they're putting those shapes together in their drawing. So I'm just going to show you really quickly on my Post-it note here. I'll try to make this bigger because I think you can just see it in a little square. So if I was drawing a person, I might say something like, oh, I'm going to draw my family. So I'm going to make a circle for the head. And then I'm going to make an oval for the body. And maybe the child that you're working with has a piece of paper, and they might be also thinking about using some of these shapes as you're making them. I'm going to make a line for one arm and a line for another arm. I'm going to make some legs with lines and then maybe a straight line for the feet. I might draw it another way. You can see in the picture that maybe instead of making an oval for the body, I just make a stick for the body. And I say, oh, that's another way I can make a person, is by just making their body a stick. Or maybe I can use a triangle or a square for the body. So I'm naming those shapes and those parts so that kids can hear and think about how they might use those shapes that are familiar to them as they're drawing. And it makes it more accessible. And also those shapes and motions are the same shapes and motions that they're going to use to make many of their letters as they begin to write those letters. So giving them practice with those is important. Another thing is adding labels to creation. So here you can see a house, and a child was given some scrap paper and some tape, and they went ahead and they label. This particular child was a young child, 3 years old, and labeled with pictures. But we're going to watch a child who is starting to develop some awareness of letters and sounds as in the next video. And this is a video that was shared on some resources for parents from Teachers College out of Columbia University. And so you'll see in the corner, his mom shared this video. So you'll see his mom there explaining. So here is a picture of a little guy in kindergarten adding labels to his creation.
Business. What do you need? B.
I don't know.
A B, big line down.
You can hear her saying the pathway for the letter, big line down, bump, bump.
Okay.
P.
Go for cars. There's 3 words. Okay, we need to write 3 words. What's the first word?
4.
Go.
I have to read O.
Go. I hear an O. Write it. Go.
4.
Is there a sound? What makes that? V makes a similar sound. This is F makes that. Go for cars.
O.
Cars.
T.
K makes.
Car.
There's another like cookie or Carter.
C.
C. Can you read it to me?
Go for cars.
Excellent. Where should we put
Does
that?
it say
Son?
go for cars?
I can read it. You can read it too.
Read it.
Go for cars. All right, where's it going to go on your?
So a couple of things to point out in this video is that it's really asset minded. It's really strengths based. So focusing on what the child can do. So there were a couple of times where someone, someone who is more adept at conventional writing might have been like, no, that's not right. But instead really focusing on what the child is doing and what the child is approximating. And even when the child said, does it say go for cars? She said, well, you can read it and I can read it. So it was really celebrating what he was able to do. And she even was helping a little bit with the difference between the sound and the v sound and helping him to distinguish some of those things. But you can see the joy and you can hear the joy in their voices there as she's coaching him and playing alongside him and making those labels. Oops. Oh, let me get to the next part. So that leads us to some storytelling. And so another piece that's really important for our kids is just the ability to tell stories and to retell stories. They might be stories from their lives. So sometimes parents might take a time of day, maybe it's dinner time, or maybe it's before bedtime. Sometimes at our house, it was during bath time. Those were some of the best conversations, but recounting the parts of their day. You might even give them like on their hands, you might even start to say like, well, what happened first? And what happened next? And you might start to give them some of those transition words. They can start to like tell their story across their hands in sequence or in order of the events that happened. But just giving them opportunities to tell stories from their lives, but also tell stories, maybe retell the stories that you've read, are going to build joy and motivation and engagement for beginning reading. So this next video is a video of actually my friend of mine. It's a video of her daughter, and she recorded this when she was 4. Anaya loves the camera and loves to have videos shared with her friends and family. So Anaya is reading a book, and you'll notice when Anaya is reading this book that this particular story is about a child who is adopted from China. And the thing that I want to really highlight for you is that Anaya sees herself in this story. So if you're familiar with Rudine Sims Bishop's work around windows and mirrors, this is an opportunity for Anaya to see herself in text, and you'll see some of the joy that she gets as she's reading emergently this book.
Once upon a time, we're gonna read a book and like in a card trading cake. It's about me. Okay, once upon a time, there were a lot of people kept babies in bed and just like and actually when they put two babies in bed share, then they have enough cribs. And a mother said they need a new baby and they got one and raised them and made it. Then her dad then had put it in the mail and the mail person got it and see what it said. He said, someone needs a baby. And her started crying and set her down and kissed her little hand and tucked her in bed. I put a little hat on and took a picture. And we went back home. Before we leave, we should say goodbye. They put me in my bed and they played with all the toys and made a big mess. They tucked me in bed, they get me presents, and mother just carried her and song and gave her body. Her hugged me and then her put her in bed when they all went to bed. Yeah, do it again.
I love that when she finishes, she's like, let's do it again. She also sometimes in her videos will say, who, like she'll list who she wants it sent to. So can you send it to Jenny? Can you send it to grandma? Like she'll kind of go through, but just the joy that she has in retelling and re-experiencing this story, but also the connection that she has to this story and her own life and her own story is helping to build important identity and joy in who she is. And oops, then my videos keep playing. And Lisa also put the reference that I made earlier to Dean Sims Bishop's work. And she said that her clipboard multiplied it a few different times, but you can find the work from Rudine in her message in the chat. So just thinking about these budding readers and writers, thinking about what activities might have come before this reading and writing that they were doing to support them, and what skills or strategies did you notice that were independent now as these 4 and 5-year-olds were reading to us or writing? Yeah, modeling is an amazing tool for really supporting kids, and not just modeling, but inviting them to try it out. So modeling it, doing it, and then inviting them to try it too is really important. And it builds independence. So one thing that I've really been working on lately is adult principles of learning. So this next slide is about integrating anything that might have been new today in this presentation with the work that maybe you've already begun in your classes, in your professional spaces, classrooms or otherwise, or maybe even in your homes. So one of the quotes from Pernell Ripp that I use on this slide is, don't let new ideas become forgotten plans. So if you're watching now live, you might take a moment just to jot down some ideas to these questions that I'm about to post. If you're watching virtually or on YouTube, you might pause and just take this opportunity to reflect, to integrate some of these ideas. So think about 2 or 3 ideas that you found valuable today. How might this new learning shift items in your current practice or ideas in your current practice? What are your hopes and intentions for incorporating these practices or resources into your classroom or your home or wherever you might be working with children? And finally, before you leave today, thinking about the steps that you're going to make or the steps that you'll take to make this shift. I always say that a goal is just a wish without a plan. So taking the opportunity before you leave this space to really reflect and integrate your knowledge is going to be important to bring this knowledge into practice. So as promised, you'll see on this slide the link to the Padlet that I promised with these resources. So if you are here, let me see if I can put it here. Oh, no, I'm going to put the link in the chat for anyone who's here. I'm just going to have to flip over to get it. And I'll put that here for you. But if you're not here with us, if you are watching virtually, you can use the link that's on this slide to find these resources. So there it is for you. So if you have any questions or comments about anything that that was presented today, I really was thinking about application. I looked back and saw some of your previous presentations, and I didn't incorporate or infuse a lot of theory or a lot of research, but all of these things are research supported practices. But I really was thinking about application, and I know especially for the teachers that I work this time of year, middle to end of April is really the time that their brains are really overloaded. So thinking about application is a much easier lift for them than really processing some heavy theory or research right now. So I hope it was helpful. Thank you for inviting me back. And if anyone wants to stay around, I'll stay around for another few minutes.
Jenny, as always, that was super informative, amazing. You always have real life engaging ideas. So we thank you so much for being here. And I want you to jump on. If you have any questions for Jenny, please ask now. I'm also going to plug our early childhood conference in really quick. It is June 7th, 8th, and 9th. We have 3 full days of amazing presenters, 3 opening keynotes. I'm going to share that in the chat so that you can go and look at the agenda so you can register, and also our early childhood podcast. If you don't know about it, we are in our 3rd season and we have some amazing speakers on there also, sharing that now. But come on the line, you can unmute yourself and ask Jenny any questions that you have of her. Jenny, thank you again so much. I am going to stop the recording.
Okay, great. Thanks to everyone for joining.